channel. I have a special guest here today. You all probably do recognize her from 2 previous videos. Michelle is here joining us today. Super excited to have her back. We're talking about something very important, and that is going to be the emotions that you feel when you start your technology journey or when you're learning, just the emotions that really overflow you. And sometimes we don't know how to address them, and sometimes we don't know really if other people feel the same way. And especially when you work remotely in a technology job, you really don't feel that. So we want to make sure that here on this episode, Michelle has a chance to introduce her book, which I'm not going to say much about. I'll let her do that. But also we're going to be asking her some questions just about how she came up with the idea of creating the book, the characters, and also the future of her content that she has. So Michelle, welcome back. Super, super happy to have you here. Always love having you here on top of that. I would love to just be able to ask you how you came up with the book, what the book's name is, and a little background.
Sure. Thank you, Megan, so much for having me back. I'm super happy to be able to share this book with everybody that's going to be watching this video. And definitely, I think that, like you said, the emotion handling side of life is something we don't learn in school. And me as an adult and coming on a new company and learning something I had no clue about before coming into this job gave me a lot of anxiety. I was like, I should know this. Oh my gosh, this is difficult. And sometimes, you live within your head, and these emotions are within, like they come from within. So nobody tells you how to behave with yourself. So the reason why I came up with this book is I'm really into art in illustration. So I had the opportunity to take this workshop on how to create a kid's book, how to write a story that would be appealing depending on the age, and how do you come up with the pages and where do you put the images. It was very technical, but at the end of the day, it was about creating something, right? Like writing something, write your own story, and just put an image to each story, which I think is awesome because we are very creative creatures, humans. So to be able to translate what's in your head onto paper with colors and shapes, that was super exciting for me. So I was like, what is a book that is not, I wanted it to have a message, right? Because, kids' book can be fun or just like a bedtime story, but I wanted to have a deeper meaning. Being my first book that I was gonna create, I was like, I want it to be impactful. So that's how I started, with the idea on creating it. And so after I got into that workshop, there was you have to pick a theme, right? You have to pick a story, and I was like, my mind was flooded with ideas, like I could do this or that. But again, I was like, but I want it to be helpful. I want it to be thoughtful, So I was having a session with my coach in my work, and we were talking about my struggles, right? I was learning Salesforce, and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't understand this, or like, oh my goodness, I've done this already, but I already forgot how to do it. And I would spend 3-4 hours trying to do something without asking for help. And she was like, you know what? There is this in psychology, there is this idea of, the enemies of learning. And I was like, really? Tell me more, right? And it's actually a thing, So it's a group of identified emotions that would present themselves when you're learning something new. And she told me about it, and I was like, whoa, it's like the light bulb. I was like, that sounds like my book, and that's how I came up with the idea. And that's actually the name of the book, The Enemies of Learning.
That's amazing. And I was actually going to ask you to walk us through your journey. So I'm glad that you actually shared that with us. So I would love to be able to ask you also, how long, did it take you to come up with this book? What were the emotions that you felt during it? And just kind of walk the audience through your thought process of, okay, you have the title, but how do you go about creating that story?
Definitely. I think that, being prepared, and that's what I liked about the workshop. This was a course that you would take to really get prepared, right? Like look at images, get ideas, brainstorm. So after I talked to my coach about the enemies of learning, then she said, and there are the friends of learning, emotions that you can uh, not not like call, right? But you can actually like find yourself feeling this negative emotions, and you can kind of like bring yourself back and talk to yourself, right? So I was like, oh, so I downloaded the theory of those, like the enemies and the friends, and that's how I started thinking about the characters, because like there is a name for each emotion, and they describe it, right? Like the theory. And I was like, I felt that, I'm feeling that actually. And I was like, yes, that, I just, it resonated with me so much, because I was going through all of that. And I could actually think of times where I thought I was talking to myself, and I was like, this exactly is what that emotion represents, right? And then I started like, I had to do some sketches of my characters. So I would name them. I was like, you're gonna be this character, and then kind of like started giving them like their face expression and like their body posture. And it was really like the creative process on doing a kid's book is awesome, because like you get to sketch a lot. I did like 4 drafts of the story, because it's a dialogue. There are many ways in which you can create a book, so you can just tell a story in very different ways, but I wanted dialogues, because that's actually what I could hear in my head, like the dialogues between these emotions. So
that's awesome. And I'm glad you even created this book, because again, kind of what we talked about in the beginning was that emotions is something from a young age that we don't get to express all the time. Like learning, middle school, high school, college, at a job, it doesn't matter. So like emotions are super important. So I'm glad that even the company that you were at really just supported the idea of creating something and kind of like walked you through it, because that represents not only a good company, but also the fact that they're devoting more time into like your personal growth too. So I would love to be able to have the audience actually see the book. So what we're going to do for everybody watching is that Michelle's going to drive the screen, and she's going to walk us through her book, take us through the characters, and really just kind of tell us every emotion that she felt with each character. So let's go ahead and get into it.
all right, so here is on screen, this is the cover, and you'll wonder, what is that I see there? So I'm going to start talking about how I came up with the characters, right? So I love animals. I love cats, I love dogs. So I just thought about a character that would be like fantasy. I like reading fantasy, things that are not necessarily real, but you can relate to them. So I thought about a dog with wings, and that's why you see there. And I'm just gonna like go on and talk about the characters. So the first thing you see here is like we have 2 main characters. That the one that you see, well, not yet, but here in the book you see Z, which is one of the main characters, and that is kind of like the other main character's friend that's gonna take him on this journey. That's how I represented the story, like when you feel comfortable in your life and you are in a safe space, and then there comes a new journey, and then you find yourself having to leave what was comfortable and getting into this new adventure. So this is Z, that is the name of this character. And then he finds learning, and that's actually the name of the dog with wings. And learning, it's the main character, because like we're gonna like the book is the enemies of learning. So this is the journey of learning, like getting in front of these enemies and how he felt. So as you can see, it's all nice, it's all happiness, rainbows and flowers. But then things start getting hard, and just in the creative process, you think about the shapes of your lines, the colors that you use. And I'm like, colors everywhere. I love colors everywhere. So they take up on most of my pages. So here you can start, like, you see, like, from the red and green and happiness, you start seeing like brown and getting a little bit darker, and then there's where learning bumps into the first of his enemies. And as you can see, you know, the face expressions, like, these are kind of like grim emotions, like negative emotions, and he's startled because, as we all are, we usually are not taught from when we're little, like, how to, like, okay, when you feel this, you put a name to it, right? Like, we don't even know what words to use sometimes to express what we feel, right? So the first emotion that he encounters here is Margot. That is the name I gave her. And as you can see, you know, just like she has a very sad face and not very like encouraging face, and she starts telling him things, and this is how the story goes. Then this is the second character that appears, that it also, you know, doesn't look happy, and she's also she starts telling him more negative things, and her name is Mildred. And then you know, see that his friend starts noticing that something is wrong with learning, like, what's wrong? And that's when you figure out that your learning has stopped, you know, that you are not advancing so much. So then you see another character here that is another emotion that comes, and his name is Hank. He's big and tall and scary. At least that was the idea. And then the next character that what starts to happen is that, you know, they're not so happy learning anymore. It's not, you know, flowers and rainbows anymore. We start getting a little bit down. So then we see twins, you know, some twin emotions, and they're like, we're here, Lila and Lola. Another, you know, bunch of, you know, thoughts into your head, and you can see how learning starts getting very sad and very frustrated, and his face is not happy anymore. And then lastly but not least, this last emotion called Blake, and you know, he kind of like gives it the final hit. And then, you know, C notices that learning is really, really sad. And here you have all of these emotions like hovering over learning and trying to have it down. Actually, this is like the main image of the book. When I created it, this was my color and shape testing, right? Like the colors of the gamma of colors that I was gonna have for my book. I like red hair, so they're redheads, and kind of in a desert. So as you can see, learning here is like super sad and super frustrated, and all of them are there. So here comes you know, Z being the friend, and he's the one that represents like the voice of you know, advice. And he starts talking about how, you know, you are going to face these enemies, but there are friends too. So here comes another group of emotions, and the first one is Bree, and you know, these are kind of like the ones that fight back each of the bad emotions. So you can start seeing how they, you know, kind of fight the bad guys. I'm really into comics and superheroes too, so I kind of like put a little bit of that in the book, you know, the good guys and the bad guys, and you know, good guys are always gonna win. So as you can see, all the emotions start getting kicked and moved over. We have Kendra, and then we have the other, these are the twins fighting the other twins. And then, you know, learning starts looking happy again, and you can see the aura that they have. You know, it's like light and bright and better. And then as you could see all of the bad emotions, then the good emotions can come around and make you happy again and make you positive again. And then just analyzing, that being gracious with yourself, that's something I learned in this process too, that it's okay to feel those emotions. Like, we're human, and we're gonna feel them. And even though we know we can fight them, we are allowed to sit and feel them. And um, so at the end of the day, you see here that Learning and Z finished this journey, but of course, learning will never stop, and there's more to come. And at the end, I do have here this character's guide where you can see what emotions are represented by each of the characters, right? Because like I was not gonna write in the book. So the inner critique, I wanted to like give them a name. So this is the phrase that appears, Margot, and that is the critical inner voice, that will always be the one saying, you could have done that better. You could have been faster or more efficient. And it's always critiquing, and maybe nobody in the outside is doing that. You're doing that to yourself. So that is one of the emotions. And you can see here, like, this is the guide. Each of the characters embodies one of the emotions. And then obviously the friends here that are the ones you can call upon and make you feel better when these other emotions just come to you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Michelle, so when people are learning technology, what out of these emotions that you wrote about and talked about in your book, what are some of the emotions that people should be aware of, and that maybe they commonly ignore when they're learning? And I'll give an example. When I'm learning flows, for example, I get very frustrated. I start thinking like, oh, he's better or she's better, and I'm taking too long. This is taking me, I'm not even lying on this one. It's taking me like 8 or 12 hours to understand what I'm doing. And, I think it really comes from people from different backgrounds growing up academically, and just how we learn. It's hard. So like, what emotions would you say that people feel sometimes and most often? And how can they go about dealing with them to not be so self-negative towards themselves sometimes?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I think that once you identify what you're feeling, it's a lot easier to get out of there faster, like you said. Because sometimes you find yourself like going in circles for hours and hours and hours, and it turns really negative. And that's the worst thing, you're trying to learn something, and by letting all of these emotions get the best of you, it makes it harder to learn. So it's kind of like shooting yourself, So I think that the first one and the one that affected me the most, and when I've spoken to people that are learning, and they mention it, is discomfort about discomfort. And it sounds redundant, but it's like you're gonna feel discomfort because you're getting to know something you've never heard of, or you get to do something for the first time. So it's like, it's not comfortable because you are out of your comfort zone. So then you start feeling uncomfortable about being uncomfortable, and that makes it a lot worse. So it's just about being like, yes, I'm out of my comfort zone. This is not what I was doing before. This is not something I've been doing. So it is going to be hard, and I will feel uncomfortable, but just letting yourself feel that without adding more uncomfort on top of the one you're going to feel, just by the fact that you're going to learn something new, you're going to be out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, because you can't grow if you're uncomfortable, or you can't actually, you can't grow if you're not comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's it right there, because if you don't get accustomed to that, and I think the first step is just acknowledging that you feel that way. I think that for everybody watching, it's a great idea to just have a notebook near you, or just something, iPad, whatever, and write down the emotions that you're feeling and identify that. So when you feel frustrated, you feel angry, you can come up with habits. Okay, I feel angry and frustrated. I'm not taking too long on something, because you're learning it. We all learn differently, but address how you're going to come up with a plan on how you're going to deal with that emotion. Go for a walk, create something, whatever your personal outlet is. And I think it's amazing, Michelle, that you really just put this together and you were able to identify your emotions, because that's really hard to do sometimes. So perfect. So thank you, Michelle, for showing the book, and we'll go ahead and get back to questions. You were fast on that one. Okay, well, awesome. Again, Michelle, thank you for going through the book with us. I know that a lot of people will find it really beneficial. So I would love to be able to ask you, as the writer of this own story, what were your emotions writing this book?
So that's actually a very interesting question, because like the creative process for like doing a book and writing it, it's something new too, you know, and there are so many options, and you're like, what if I use this color? What if I write this? But that would be better, you know, all this like thinking. So and there was like, we were a group of people, and you start comparing yourself, and other people start showing like pieces of their work, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, mine's not that cool, you know. So like critiquing yourself, you know. It's like, oh gosh, this is exactly why I need to know how to handle these things, because you know, we are emotional beings. And it's funny and ironic, because like when you go to school, there is no, you know, there's nothing that will teach you like to give it words, you know, to put a word to what you're feeling. Like you just said, write it on a notebook, acknowledge how you feel, use your words, give it a name, so you can just like see it, feel it, and then let it go. Because when you don't know what you're fighting, you like, how are you gonna win, right? So I think I was at some point, I was like, this is not good enough, you know, it should be prettier or cleaner, or I could have done it better. But then, you know, in the process, I was like, okay, this is exactly what we're doing, you know, that we're fighting this. And through the small research I did about like those good emotions, like don't be afraid of asking for help, or don't be or like be okay with being inquisitive or curious about things, because sometimes we feel like, oh no, I'm not gonna ask this question because I'm gonna sound dumb. But if you don't know, then you don't know. And how are you gonna know if you don't ask, right? Like maybe now we have the internet and you can Google things, but still, like the human interaction, asking for help from your peers, from people that have been there, you know, it's very valuable. So I think through the process of this creating this book, I went through like those emotions as well. And I think that the one that came the hardest was like critiquing my work. Like, you know, like the others' drawings are prettier than mine, you know, and just like comparing and trying to do everything perfect, which is awesome that we try to achieve, you know, the most that we can. But, you know, there's beauty in imperfection. Art is beautiful and organic. So yeah, I think, and at the end of the day, I was very proud, you know, after all that process. But it took a while. It took a while while I was doing the sketches and painting and writing it and moving things around. It took a while for me to be like, this is the final piece.
That's awesome. That's such a beautiful story. And I think that when art, as you know, as a content creator now too, art is us. Art is what we define it to be. Everybody's art is different. Everybody has different artistic abilities. But whatever we create is our art, and that reflects us. Just the kind of how I came up with this background, like, I don't know, that's art right there.
That's art right there. Yes.
Yeah, and that represents us, and I think that's the coolest part. So offline, you and I talked about how your company, or working at Torin Consulting, they would give your book to new people coming in. That's amazing. I would love to be able to ask you, as a mentor, and being in the Salesforce industry for a while, and I would love to be able to ask, like, what are the feedback and what have you gotten from the people that have gotten your book and read it? What have been their reactions, their emotions, their feelings? Like, just kind of walk us through how that has been for you.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, when I created this book and published it, you know, the idea that somebody can have something that I created in their hands and read it, and that means something to them, is so exciting. I think that's what art does. You know, it gets to you and it talks to you, it like speaks to you. So since my audience for this book was not, it's really for everybody. It doesn't really have an age, because you can talk to like kids about it, but then as a grown up, we learn everything new, like something new every day. So if you forget, you can just like bump into my book and be like, oh, I can handle my emotions better. And it's a fun way of doing it, I think. So like when I was thinking about my audience, I was like, I think it could get to a lot of audiences. It depends, right? So in Torrent, there is this program for apprentices, and obviously the name says that they're going to learn something new, and they're very, very young. And obviously when you're very young, everything is new. Everything is new. You're learning everything. So the idea of giving away the book is because it addresses those emotions that probably we've felt always, but we don't have a name for them. We really don't stop and think, this is how I feel, or that's exactly what I was telling myself the other day. So just to give it a name, I think they started giving away the book for them to have a base, and for them to be aware that they were going to feel a certain way starting this path of learning technology. And a very small, pretty tool as a reminder of, like, when you feel this way, you can start, you can contrast that and say, yes, I feel this way, but I have to remind myself that it's okay to feel uncomfortable, that I don't have to be so hard on myself. And when sometimes you don't have a physical person that will be reminding you or pulling you back from the negative, sometimes you have to be that person. And I think giving that book is just that, that small tool for your journey. Now that you're starting, this is something that may help you along the way. So, and the other question you asked me, sorry, I think people do feel, I think we all feel like we know what that is about. We've all felt it. We've all thought about it. So I think, like I said, for them, it's been a small tool to remind themselves that, the journey has begun. You learn something new in technology, can get complex. You don't learn things the same way. Like you said, we all learn differently, and it's okay. You're going to be okay. I think that's the main point they get.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I wanted to touch on something that, this is a child's book, but big but there. We work with such complex things every day, especially in technology industries, not just Salesforce, but we work with such complex things where we have to like put our brain around this entire system and think about business processes. And it's that those emotions, we don't have time to like maybe sometimes take a stop and reflect on them. And I think, and I believe that when you are looking at children's books, animations, pictures, something that's easy to understand, I think that when we're introducing emotions to technology or just work in general, we need to be able to have things like that. Like we need to be able to say, okay, well, blue is sad and red is angry and yellow is mellow. So being able to reference your book like that and have that, because we need that. I think that's brilliant. So that's awesome that, the company is giving people who are starting technology, especially at a younger age, it doesn't matter what age you are, you're older, younger, like wherever you are, emotions are going to be emotions and we all feel them. So that's really great that they're giving out the book. So now I would love to be able to ask you, as you move forward, now that this book is out, where is Michelle going with her content, with her maybe even books in the future? Like, tell us a little bit about where you see yourself and what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like creating this book was a great experience. It was a while ago. I think it's 2 years ago. And, I've taken some more like illustration courses and like learned some new techniques. And, I've thought about different ways I would have done this differently. Mm-hmm. So I really want to continue doing that, addressing, like I said, maybe I just publish one just for fun. But I think that there's a message in everything we do, even if we don't intend it. And if we are intentional about giving out a good message or like helping someone by like a quote or something you created, I think that's what excites me the most about creating art, that you can get to somebody and be a positive influence, for their day, or for some struggle they've been having, whatever. So I think that right now I'm just focusing on digital art. The illustrations that you saw in my book, they were watercolors, so I just did everything watercolor, like fine art, the old school thing. And I just like scanned them and put them on the computer and put the text on them. But I think there's a thing about fine art, like painting and like the stains and the water. It makes it, so exciting still. But right now I'm focusing a little bit more on digital art. I also have a piece of a comic book. That's another story, but I'm really like superheroes and all that. So in comics, and so there is a comic that is like to be continued. I think it's gonna have like 4 parts. I'm just done with part 1 because life, but I think that is that's to come, more art that carries a message. Again, I like fantasy, so my comic book is more your fantasy type, but still stories of resilience and all of that good stuff. So
that's so exciting. I love everything you just said too. So yeah, I think a lot of people will be able to relate and they'll probably be really excited. So that's awesome. I'm really excited also to see where you're going. So for everybody watching, Michelle's book will be in the description below. I'll also be doing a newsletter about her book, just kind of debriefing the emotions that she felt, I feel, and really everybody feels as a whole learning. And Michelle, the last question I have for you is for those people that are, again, new to their journey, in their journey, further along in their journey, wherever they are, and they feel these emotions and they want to know how to deal with it, what would you say to them?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I think that something that I've learned is that you have to train yourself as if it was a muscle, because thoughts are so like they just come to your head. But when they are not positive, then you have to train yourself to be able to identify them. We become so like automatic about everything. We don't even realize we're feeling a certain way, or we even acting a certain way. So I think that like you said, just stopping, just taking a moment. I think we live in a society where everything is so fast, like your attention span is like seconds, and everything is just so fast paced. Just stop and breathe and just like think about how you feel and acknowledge that. I think that is the like self knowledge is so important, because like I said, like we come to this world, and even twins and people that are triplets, at the end of the day, at night, you sit with your own mind, right? And you have to be there for yourself. You have to show up for yourself. So just like train yourself to recognize when these emotions come and be like, yep, here it is, I'm thinking this, and acknowledge them and feel them. Because like sometimes we try to like avoid feeling or thinking, but it's still there. It's not going to go away. You just have to acknowledge them, and then just like think about what's gonna make about like balance them, right? Think about reality, and how are you gonna get yourself out of that zone? Because like I said, at the end of the day, you can have really good friends or leaders or mentors that will give you good talks or pep talks and stuff. But again, at night, when you're all by yourself, that's when you have to show up for yourself. So train yourself, read stuff that is good for you, educate yourself about emotions and how the human brain works, because that's like we only grow as much as we want. The sky's the limit. So if you want to grow, you have to do the work for you. So
yeah, everything you said is so important there. And I think that if you want to start acknowledging how you feel, which you should, wherever and whatever industry you're in, we just went through a pandemic. And if we went through so many emotions on top of that, that if we're not able to take those emotions, take any emotions that you go through day, like, you have to acknowledge how you feel, especially when you're learning new things. It's so easy. I talk to so many of my mentees and just people, and I see it online. I'm frustrated. I'm learning this. I need help here. And it's just the mere fact of acknowledging that's the first step. And then the second step is, like Michelle said, investigating, finding out why, tracking why you feel that way. I know that that's something that I got to start doing too, a little bit more of, because man, these flow sometimes.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. My gosh. So Michelle, thank you so much. Everybody watching, I'm going to be linking her first video right here, and then you'll see the second video right here. We talk about what it is to be a Latina in tech, and then also we talk about just Michelle's consulting role over the years and things that she's learned. There's a lot of valuable information there, so don't forget to check those two links out above. Michelle, again, it's always a pleasure having you on here. This will not be, everybody, the last time that you see her. She's going to be one of my frequent favorite people to have on here. So thank you for telling us about your book and the emotion.
You're very welcome. Yeah, thank you for having me and letting me share my baby book here, because I love it. It's the first one. It was my first project, so love if it can get to someone and make a change. That's what art is for.
Yeah, that is exactly what art is for. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.